every player on the Heat roster, what they had to say during exit interviews, and what we thought of how they played this season, coming up right now in part 2 of our season recap. But before then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to another episode of After the Buzzer. I am your host, Couper Moorhead, and we are diving right into the roster. We've already covered the offense, the defense, all the changes that Spo made this season. We covered Bam Adebayo in part 1. If you missed all that, be sure to go click on that video. We're about to dive into the full roster, and I want to get to Tyler Herro first. Tyler did not speak at exit interviews, but I think he's a great place to start because, look, he only played 33 games this season, but his numbers were mostly in line with his increased all-star numbers of the season before when he took a sizable leap forward. I think it's important to note that he had, granted, in a limited sample size, he had career-high numbers efficiency-wise in drives and isolation stuff, numbers where he was oftentimes, average to below average in the rest of the league. This season, in that small sample size, he really took to Miami's new offensive system in ways I didn't necessarily expect because when he first came back, Spo would dial up pick-and-roll usage. They were giving Tyler more pick and rolls, even though they weren't running them hardly at all when Tyler was out. He came back in stretches when he was healthy. They started using more pick and rolls. But then he got hurt and he came back again. And towards the end of the season, they weren't really running. That number didn't dial up in terms of pick and rolls anymore. He was just existing within the offense the same way as everybody else. He was playing off closeouts. Guys were coming at him when someone else would drive and kick. He was working in transition. He was finding his matchups. He was keeping people off balance with a handle that is so much improved over the last couple of seasons. And I think he earned those numbers. I don't know if he's going to keep hitting, 55, 60% on some of the floaters he was taking, but the gains were real. His 2-point percentage keeps going up, even when his 3-point percentage took a little time to catch up. I think Tyler, even if it was there's 33 games, it was a really positive season. And if he can keep those one-on-one gains going forward, that'll be another little mini leap for him in terms of his overall efficiency as a top leading high usage offensive guy. But you can't really talk about Tyler's season without the guy he was linked to all year, and that's Norm Powell. Now, Norm came out of the gates hot as anyone in the league for the first couple months. He really took to this system, which, Norm is one of the best guys in the league at catch and decide. Catch and make a decision, catch and shoot, catch and drive, catch and get off the ball. Just make quick, snappy decisions, and that allowed him to really thrive in the system that allowed him to catch the ball in a lot of space. He would run off-ball screens into that space, and then the Heat would kind of rotate around him, let him just go, make that split-second decision and go. But all season long, all that really great earlier part of the season was when Tyler Herro was out. Before we go into that more, let's go to what Norm had to say when asked about him and Tyler not being able to really get on the court together much this season and build something together. Here's what he had to say at exit interviews.
Yeah, I don't think we got a full chance to be able to figure that out. I think, obviously, Tyler's injury, going into training camp makes it tough, especially implementing a new offense and being able to go through those 6 preseason games and fill it out and see how each other likes to play and different spots and things like that. And then bleeding into the season and trying to figure it out on the fly is always tough, trying to build that chemistry.
So, yeah, it was tough. Norm was in, Tyler was out, then Tyler would come back, then Norm would be out, and then flip-flop and vice versa, just as Norm said. It's really, really hard to build a rhythm that way. It's hard to build any sort of chemistry. Was it going to work ever? We don't really know because we never saw it much. I don't think it's fair to assume that it couldn't have if they had been given the opportunity, health-wise at the start of the season in training camp to really learn each other. They didn't have that. I think offensively it probably had a chance to work better than many would have thought based on some of the results we saw when they were just kind of being thrown in there. I'm healthy, I'm ready to go, let's go, let's try and figure it out on the fly. That just is not a realistic way to really build chemistry together. Defensively would have been a little bit more of a struggle because if you're starting them, especially, you got to really fill out the defensive look around them. Maybe you can't switch as many pick and rolls. Maybe you got to play more zone, which, as we discussed in part 1, the zone got hit pretty hard by threes in the last month of the season. So we don't really know. Maybe they could have had one guy start, one guy come off the bench, and then merge them into combo lineups, deeper into the rotation. So it's not just the starting group or just the finishing group. It's those in-between groups where they try to find chemistry. Maybe it works there because, the version of them that are both healthy and playing together in an offensive lineup in this system could have been really good. We just didn't see it. I think it's a bummer for both of them because, people are going to make assumptions on what could have been or could not have been. We just didn't see it. And that's kind of how the breaks are sometimes. I think Norm, from his time here in the 1 year, really great with us. He was a wonderful guy to be around, and he was an all-star, obviously. So when you're an all-star and you pass age 30 for the first time, that's a good season for you. He was a good fit in the offense. Just had dealt with some injuries down the end of the year, and Spo just had to navigate the Tyler and Norm thing throughout the season. And before we move on to the next player, I just would like you to hear what Spo also had to say about the Tyler and Norm combo coming right up.
When one was dealing with an injury, the other one was in the mix and playing well, and then it would just flip-flop. And it flip-flopped, a few times. But, we would have been able to make that work. And that would have really helped. But those are, just things that happen. And if I say anything right now, it'll just come across as an excuse. But if you miss, that many games, that Tyler missed, that's a big hit. Our offense was able to put up some points, but, Tyler's a unique offensive talent. That definitely would have helped. You take your leading scorer off of your team for 40 games, that'll have an impact on any team, fighting in the East. And then, Norm played so well, before the All-Star break. He was playing great basketball. That's why that was earned, for him to be an All-Star this year. And then he started to go through his injuries and sickness after that, where he was never able to fully get in rhythm. Even though the last two games he looked a lot more like himself.
All right, let's get to our next guy in DaVon Mitchell. DaVon, had an excellent season for everything that was asked of him. It was a low usage year, for a point guard on a high octane offense, but he clearly can dial it up at times. He was great at attacking mismatches. His drive efficiency was wonderful. When he got a guy that couldn't absorb that DaVon shoulder to the chest, DaVon could just put him into the restricted area and hit a low floater over him all season long. He was a huge driver of the team's pace, a big reason why they kept getting up and down all year. Sometimes teams will start out running a lot, but they don't have the personnel or the motor with their personnel to keep that pace going. DaVon was a huge part of why they were the number one team in pace pretty much from game 1 to game 82. Again, he had to navigate the offense, and he had to figure out where he was going to be within it, and here's what he had to say on exit interviews.
It make it tough for us to guard because you couldn't just scheme on just one player. You kind of had to scheme on everyone because we all had the opportunity to drive. We all had the opportunity to make a play. It wasn't just like give the ball to one person, let him come off a pick and roll, and make a play. You can kind of scheme those things. Some nights people get hot, obviously, but I think that just everyone was a threat every time on the floor. No matter 1 through 5, you're just a threat. You just kind of had to be aggressive and be assertive about the things that you do. So he made I think with his offense has made it easier for everyone.
And, of course, DaVon was a big part of the defense as well. He was, excellent on the ball. He was a big part of their, everybody wants to say point of attack defense these days. His on-ball defense, I just like to say on-ball. Maybe that makes me old. But, DaVon could absorb guys with his chest. He could stay in front as well as anybody in the league. And when he was off the floor, you would notice his absence. That's sometimes how you notice how great a guy has been on defense. I did think it was interesting that during his interview, DaVon also noted, he said, I wasn't all defensive caliber this year, which, you appreciate a guy being humble and having the self-awareness to analyze his own game. Some of that is just because, he's not the tallest guy on the floor, so it's hard for him to affect bigger matchups, bigger players. It's hard, it's really tough for a guy his size to, impact the rim defense. But for what he was asked to do on the ball, I think DaVon had a really good year. And there's really not a whole lot to criticize him for. His shooting has been better than advertised. It was ticking up last year. It continued to be a strong point this season. His passing was good. His pace was good. Really good year for DaVon overall. Next guy is Jaime Jaquez Jr., Sixth Man of the Year candidate. I thought this new offense was as good for him as it was for anybody else on the team. Just getting guys on his shoulders, on his hips, getting guys hitting them in the chest, finishing around, under, over them. However, with his hook shots, he put a lot of emphasis on playing off 2 feet this year, keeping his dribble alive, not just going to a one-leg finish from his launching pad, not just getting to picking up his dribble where he gets stuck at 10 feet or anything like that. He did a great job keeping everything alive, keeping Miami's bench offense moving forward all season long. The traction was almost always there. The playmaking went up. I know Eric Spoelstra mentioned that he really appreciated Jaime's playmaking going up because they needed that driving kick, and Jaime did a heck of a lot of driving kicking this year. Again, we asked Jaime about how the offense looked and how it kind of helped his improvement, and here's what he had to say at exits.
I think I was just able to get in the paint, really put pressure on defenses, make the right reads. I thought the flow and the movement helped a lot with that. It's really easy to make passes when guys are moving for you and getting into open spaces. And I think that was the key to this offense is the movement. And so for me, it made reads a lot easier. It made the space a lot more open so I could be able to get in and do what I do. We put up a lot of points, and it ended up working up great. The fast break aspect of our game as well was extremely crucial. That's why we're able to put up a lot of points this year.
Similar to Jaime, I thought Pella Larson took as big of a leap forward as anybody on the team this year. I thought he also benefited from the offense in the same way that Jaime did, because Pella is also a hard-driving guy, gets guys on his shoulders, goes shoulders first into the paint. It worked out for him, and as much as Pella is a self-professed role player, that's how he's always described himself. He's never really tried or spoken about himself as being more than that. In an offense that's asking you to go one-on-one in space, he did a really great job of that. His efficiencies on drives were very, very strong all season long. He was a huge part of the way the team was able to attack mismatches because they weren't calling up weak defenders in the pick and rolls all the time. They were just finding those guys. Who's guarding Pella? Is he one of the 3 best defenders on the floor? No. Pella, here's the ball and go create something in the paint. A lot of the times he did. He finished through contact. He finished and ones. Going forward, the shooting he'll probably want to develop even more. Sometimes that comes, years 3, 4, 5 for a guy. That'll help the team space the floor even more. But overall, I don't really know how you could ask for any more from Pella, who we also know is a gritty, tough defender. Did everything the team asked him to do, was always diving on the floor for the loose ball. Pella's kind of the ultimate, as Spo would call him, the ultimate glue guy, ultimate role player. Really, really strong year for him. I'm very excited to see where he can go going forward, because as much as he calls himself a role player, and maybe that's what he is in terms of like usage rates and all that, in this offense, I think he can put up points on any given night depending on who the other team is putting on him. And that's a very, very valuable skill to have. And as I've said from day one, Pella just strikes me as a guy who's going to be in the league for 10-plus years no matter what. Next up, Casper Yakonus, the rookie. Didn't play a lot at the start of the season, worked his way into the rotation because he defended great. His defense was awesome pretty much from summer league all the way through. There's stuff you have to learn coverage-wise in the league that you have to catch up on as a rookie. But he played defense at NBA speed all year long, and he played defense with his chest. He played defense tough. That's a huge deal for a guy, his age at just 19 years old. On offense, it was interesting because he shot the ball above expectations. Above expectations for most any rookie. He was over and around 40%. He just didn't get to play because of the offense. He didn't get to play a lot of pick and roll basketball. And if you watch him in college, if you watch film on him before he got to the Heat, he's a pick and roll point guard. He's a creator out of pick and roll. He's out of those advantage situations. And in this system that requires you to kind of beat your man more off the dribble, he just was able to do that less. And I asked him in Casper versus Man a few words, but I still want you to see his answer about what it's like when you maybe are used to playing pick and roll basketball and then suddenly asked to do something different. Here's what he had to say.
So I think I'm pretty adaptable on the court. I can, try to implement other things, but it was a little bit of adjustment for sure to play different kind of basketball. But like I said, I try to do the best I can in any situation and just work on the things I need to work on, especially this summer, and get better.
Spo described Cass as the nicest guy you'll ever meet off the floor, an absolute animal on the court. He said Cass is not looking to make any friends in this league, and that's something you have to respect about the guy going forward. Whether or not the offense changes. And again, this is a multi-year development process. I think we want to keep an eye on his paint finishing, which was below where he would have wanted it to be this year, but it's usually low for every rookie point guard. Paint finishing in the NBA is incredibly tough. It's just something that I'm sure will be part of his development plan going forward, and we'll see, as he learns when is the floater, when it's going off, when it needs to be a touch shot off the glass, when you just need to get off the ball and don't even try the finish. All those things at NBA speed when you're going downhill, especially when you're not playing the style of pick-and-roll basketball you're used to, it can take a little time. That's just the next step for where Cass will be. Let's go to Kel'el Ware, who had, a fascinating season. First of all, he had one of the lines of the day that I just want you to hear in his answer for exit interviews. Here's what he had to say.
I would say, definitely being more in the post a little bit, improving there. Improving defensively, even more, and working on that plus minus.
I thought that was very funny. I appreciate the guy because, as much as we talk about Bam's, impact numbers, his on-off court differentials, if you're a guy like Kel'el, who's on the other side of that sometimes, and he's not the only one playing center. There were a whole host of different lineups when Bam was off the floor. So it's not all on Kel'el, but obviously he's going to hear some of that in terms of his plus-minus game-to-game. Clearly the coaching staff has been talking to him about that all year. It's come up a number of times in terms of plus-minus in terms of winning numbers. To have some self-awareness, to be able to have some good humor about that speaks a lot to who he is as a player, and I think it says a little bit. I know it's just one sentence in an exit interview on the last day of the season, but I think it matters that a guy can kind of look at himself and talk in that way about, what he needs to get better at in terms of what the narrative about him has been and what people have been telling him about who he thinks he can be himself, because he can be really, really good. I thought his biggest steps this season were as a rebounder. He really started attacking not just high-pointing balls that were in his zone, going outside the zone, got a little bit more physical on the glass, followed up shots around the rim incredibly well. The shooting was there as it was for Casper. The shooting in the system needed it. As we talked about with Bam, the centers just have to space the floor. They can't be hanging around the paint all the time because otherwise you're jamming up the paint for the drivers. So Kel'el had to step out. He made a lot of threes. That was a huge part of the offense. It was very valuable. Going forward, if he can shoot just as efficiently at the same volume, it's going to be a huge part of his career. I just think, again, just like with Cass being a young point guard in the league, Kel'el being a young center in the league, still with a lot to learn. It was telling that Spo often wanted to go to zone defense with his lineups because the man-to-man defensive looks could get a little wonky at times, especially against teams that had guys who could shoot quick threes off the dribble, coming off a pick and roll. Kel'el, as the season went along, that was part of his development process, was when to be up to touch on the three, when to be in drop coverage, how to manage that space in between. Because if you go up too high, a guy can get by you. If you drop too low, a guy takes that quick three. If you don't manage everything in between, you can get a lob thrown over your head, or you challenge a shot, a guy has offensive rebounding behind you. There's so many things that go into pick and roll defense for a young center. It's one of the toughest things in the league to learn. There were games where he was outstanding. There were games where you could see, he needed a little bit more work, and Spo's usage of him, the minutes went up and down accordingly, which again I think is fine in the bigger picture in terms of this season. That's why the impact numbers maybe aren't there that you would expect him to be for a guy of his size and potential, but I think he was getting there, and as long as the trend line is going in the right direction as it did this season, I think everything is headed the right way for Kel'el. And again, I really appreciate that he kind of has he understands his place and what's going on around him, and I just think if he can keep getting better, because I'm not going to talk about it a lot because I thought it was a little bit overblown. Every third day we're talking about Bam and Kel'el playing together at the same time. Sometimes it was really good. Sometimes there was the same issue with Bam being parked in the corner, just as it was for a lot of other lineups, and the offense being run away from him. They played a lot of zone. They tried to get to it. It got a lot better. Before January, the Bam and Kel'el lineups, or before February, they were kind of lesser negative net rating. Since then, they're plus 20 per 100 possessions or something like that. Some of that was building up numbers against, teams like that weren't playing great defense or anything like that. But you want positive numbers against no matter who you're playing. And they had good games as a pair against good teams. Again, it's a very good sign going forward. It's just about bringing it all together and seeing how it all meshes, with whatever the roster looks like next year. Let's go to Nico Jovic, who credit him for speaking at exits. It was not the year clearly that he wanted. It's not the year we thought. I think at the beginning of the season, we did a video, a whole after the buzzer on him, about how this offense could be so good for him, how he could be a pace driver, how he could work those one-on-one situations, how he could play make, be a connector, be the guy that gets the ball so someone else can make a quick decision and attack the paint. There were so many things that we thought would work out for Jovic, and in preseason, it looked like that was all coming together. And the season started. It was a little up and down. Then he got hurt, and then he was in and out of the lineup. And it's just one of those seasons where the traction just never really was there. It's similar to Jaime last season, just in and out of the lineup, injuries, could never find the right rhythm, could never find his right place. All you got to do is find a way to turn it around, because Jaime clearly did it. And I want you to hear the comparison that Spo made when asked about whether there's something Nico can see and how Jaime responded to the difference between his second and third season for Jaime, even though Nico is in a little later years. But here's what Spo had to say about that at exits.
Yeah, I think that's a great parallel, a great comparison, for Nico, because as frustrated as he seemed this year, and he felt like, just had a string of bad luck. That's exactly what was happening to Jaime last year. But it was his intention just to go in and not blame anything, just get to work. And I think, that's, Nico's objective, this offseason, to not have a victim mindset about it, to not blame anything, just get to work and improve the things that he needs to improve and be ready to reach the potential, that he has as a basketball player. What he does fits.
Getting towards the end of the roster, Simone Fontecchio, I appreciate that he was talking about working on this season in the stay ready so you don't have to get ready role, staying mentally prepared for some nights you're going to play a lot, some nights you're not. You just can't control every night. And he said that's something he wasn't always great at, but this season he got good at it in terms of just being ready for whatever was asked of you every single night. And frankly, he was exactly that. He would come in, fire away from three, because that's what they needed him to do. He would attack sometimes one-on-one within what the offensive context was. And pretty much whether the shot was falling or not, he was always the same guy. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. It doesn't mean, every game he came in and hit 4 threes, because nobody, even the best shooters in the league, aren't always going to do the same thing. He just always played the same way, had the same approach to it, played hard, did everything that was asked from him. I don't think there's really much to criticize Simone for. He was who he was whenever he needed to be and whenever he was asked to be. And that, I think, is a credit to him. Drew Smith, look, Drew is one of the most underappreciated guys. I think he was up there in deflections in the entire league. Great around the ball, really helpful on defense. Shooting kind of went up and down, as it did for a lot of guys. Sometimes he was in the rotation, sometimes he wasn't. Sometimes he was playing ahead of Casper, sometimes he wasn't playing ahead of him. I think it's perfectly fine whether he's the second guard or the third guard. He filled his role. What he was talking about at exit interviews was that he finally gets to go into the summer not having a rehab. He doesn't have a torn Achilles, doesn't have a torn ACL. He just gets to have a normal summer, to work on his game, develop, and then come back. And I just assume Drew's always going to be the same guy. If the shooting goes up, that makes him even more valuable. But having a guy who can bring him off the bench at any time, and he's going to dig in, he's going to get in the passing lanes, he's going to disrupt guys' dribbles. He's going to be a defensive presence on the floor. That is hugely valuable. And Drew, we're just happy that he's healthy. I hope he has a great summer. I hope he's really able to enjoy it. I'm sure he's going to put a lot of work in, but I hope he also gets to enjoy just being healthy for one off season. And we'll finish up with Keshad Johnson, who, to his credit, when he got minutes this season, he had to play a lot of center, and he just did it. There was really never any complaining from him, and he played with energy. He had a couple games where he made a lot of threes. He was a valuable guy at the end of the rotation, and someone that everybody likes being around, which to me is valuable in any locker room as just being a guy that people want to be around. And he also mentioned that his life has been a little bit different since winning the dunk contest at All-Star Weekend. It's just cool. A guy like Keshad Johnson, who's really earning everything he can get every step of the way, to have a little notoriety around the league for something like the dunk contest is pretty cool. That will about do it. Myron Gardner, just want to mention, because I think it's already been forgotten, that Myron Gardner really helped win that Oklahoma City Thunder game when he came in the second quarter, hit 3 straight threes. That, to me, is the Myron Gardner game. Maybe it's not going to be as famous, probably. Something like the Rex Chapman game or anything like that, because it wasn't as explosive. It wasn't against the 96 Bulls or anything like that. It's still a very memorable game, and it's the first thing I think of when I think of Myron Gardner from this season. So that'll about do it. That's most of the roster. That's the season in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed both parts 1 and part 2 of our season recap on After the Buzzer, and we'll be back during the offseason whenever necessary. But until then, take care, and thank you for watching After the Buzzer with me.